Welcome to your unfiltered guide to navigating the workplace as a Black woman, the Black Womaning in Corporate America podcast with your host, Nicole S. Palmer. I am the CEO and founding partner of Delnick Media, an independent publishing company that amplifies underrepresented and marginalized voices. This podcast was inspired by my award-winning and best-selling book, Playing the Game While Black Womaning in Corporate America. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of Black Womaning in Corporate America with your host, Nicole S. Palmer. I'm not alone today. I have a phenomenal guest that I'm really excited to introduce you all to. Her name is Röbynn Europe. And you know how I like to do, I don't like to steal anyone's thunder. So I'm going to actually turn it right on over to her to let you all know why it is she is a phenomenal guest that you need to hear about. So Röbynn, over to you. Welcome to the show.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here. My name is Röbynn Europe. I have been working in corporate fitness for, since 2006 now. But in 2023, I had a landmark workplace discrimination case against Equinox, which shockingly I won. It was a jury trial. Yeah, I think I'm here to talk about the experience that I had, what led to that, how we won, why we won, and what's been going on since then, because there's been a lot of really cool stuff going on since then, too.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, we love to see us win in Black Women in Corporate America. So yes to that. And also, one of the things that we really focus on here, and it never ceases to amaze me. I don't want to say surprise because it's never a surprise, but like the level or lack of coverage that there is in the media when we have these landmark events that happen as it pertains to Black women and corporate America. And here you have this landmark case that went to trial, was actually adjudicated in your favor, and you won against pretty much a household name. I've gotten texts from them before. So, like, this is not just a little mom and shop thing going on. This is a chain of gyms across the country. I don't know if they're beyond that, but I know for sure
Oh, they
across
are.
the
They're in
states.
Europe as well.
There you go. And so you won this case. And can you please tell everyone what was the judgment in your favor?
Oh boy. So it was a hair over 1 million for making me whole again, and then
Right.
a $10 million punitive damages award.
Wow.
Because the purpose of punitive damages is to tell people not to ever do this again and to
Right.
deter similar defendants from ever doing it. So ultimately, the
Right.
total award was 11.25. That's not what anyone walks away with, but it was what the
Well,
jury thinks is
fair.
appropriate.
Right. But that is not chump change.
It's not.
11.25 is not something that's just an everyday amount. So that is staggering and it clearly sends a message. And yet, I didn't even know or hear about this story until it was brought to me. And so that's disheartening. That's the word I feel like I'm using all day and all year when it comes to hearing about these stories that aren't getting the level of attention that they deserve. And here you have where they actually found in your favor, which is difficult in and of itself to even prove cases of this nature that we'll get into. But yet it's like it never happened. It's like, it's not like, why isn't the press covering it? Why aren't people talking about it? Why aren't you on a press circuit? And you should be on Oprah, Good Morning America, like all of the things, right? And here we are having this conversation because it's not being covered in mainstream media. And that's unfortunate, of course. But, hey, we aim to fix that. So we're going to talk about it here. We're going to make sure we make some noise about it. Okay. So this landmark $11.25 million judgment in your favor was a result of, let's get into it. Like, what happened? That give us some background as to what took place, and then kind of walk us through what led up to you finally deciding to file a suit and what led us to today where you walked away victorious.
So I was hired by Equinox in 2018. Within I was hired initially as a fitness manager, which is sort of a junior manager position, and I was promoted within 3 weeks. I got a massive raise, and they put me in charge of a club on the Upper East Side on East 92nd Street. The
Can we talk
day
about
they
that for a
moved me,
second? Like, can
yes.
we just for a second? Because to me, I need to acknowledge the fact that Black women are everything, okay? And we go into spaces and we come in like we're just a junior level or whatever the case is. And next thing we know, we run in the show. And so here you are literally walking in as a junior associate, and 3 weeks later, they're like, we know you're phenomenal, so we're going to not only promote you, we're going to give you some money to go along with that promotion. So let's sit on that for a second because this happens all of the time, and it really accentuates what we talk about the phenomenon of pet to threat. You start off, you're the rock star, you're everything, you're amazing, and they love you, and then suddenly there's a turn. So I just needed to acknowledge that and say how just let's just celebrate that because they can't take that away from me, okay?
And I
So
do appreciate
hello.
that. I think there's a tendency, honestly, I think there's a tendency for Black women to, because of the fear of being perceived as a threat,
Mhm.
to minimize our own accomplishments. And
Absolutely.
I try literally every day to discourage that because I don't feel compelled to be boastful about my life because I think we're all improving and changing every day.
Right.
But by denying the things I know I am good at and the things I know I am dedicated to and that I put my time and energy into because I want to be good at things
Mm-hmm.
that I'm tasked with, I don't feel any obligation to be modest about those things. So for me personally, when I love when other people acknowledge what I'm doing because I think we all like praise, but I guess I just want to encourage Black women all the time not to dim their own shine because people will do it for you all day.
All
Every
day.
day.
Like I mean, we don't need to help them like at
Yeah.
all. Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think we don't do it more. And I think we kind of don't do it more because we feel like we shouldn't because of that stigma. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
there she goes again. Or, yeah, she's being braggy. But then people do something that's mundane and they get all sorts of praise for. So why not praise us when we actually have legitimate, verifiable accomplishments with the receipts? Of course. Yeah,
Agreed.
I absolutely agree that. So that's fantastic. So I just had to take a moment to just really let's highlight that. Come on, 3 weeks
Thank you.
later, just uh, like really. Okay, so they promote you 3 weeks later. They give you this nice
Yeah.
pay bump along with it, and then what happens?
They put me on in this Upper East Side club and they were very clear. Day one, I show up at this club and they tell me
Mm-hmm.
that in addition to the normal jobs of a department head, one of my
Mm-hmm.
biggest tasks is to get the junior manager who was at the club at the time that I was promoted to
Mm-hmm.
stay on task, do his job,
Okay.
actually perform his duties. I was told that the biggest problem that they were seeing was that the manager who was leaving, who's being transferred to another club, had sort of become too familiar. They'd become too friendly, and as a result,
Mm-hmm.
she was struggling to get him to do work. Of note, this was also a Black woman. So, they were pretty honest about what was going on. And
Right.
when I met with this outgoing manager on my very first day, she took me into her office. And one of the first things she said to me was, Chris, that's who I was hired to oversee, Chris has a thing for young Black girls. And she told me that I
Oh
needed
boy.
to look at myself and that it was important that I set boundaries early, otherwise I wouldn't be able to get him to do his job or respect my
Mm.
authority or anything. So it was pretty
Hmm.
alarming.
Right. Day
Anyone
one.
expected on day one.
Surprise.
And for the entire time that I was employed at Equinox, it was almost a year, it was almost every day that something came up. I think it was 4 days in, he
Mhm.
decided to let me know that some Black woman minding her business, working out on the gym floor, had a great ass. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on this show, but
Oh yeah, you're allowed to say that.
okay. And she didn't work for the club. She wasn't on staff. She was someone who was paying to be there, minding their own business. And that's day four in front of your supervisor. So yeah, it was a lot. And I wish I could say that that was the worst thing. It wasn't the worst thing. Oh man, this guy was 47 years old. He'd been with the company for 20 years. I hate to say it, but if I was somewhere for 20 years and I was still a junior manager, I would probably check myself and
Ooh,
reconsider what I'm doing in my life.
that's a whole word right there.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
just
wow.
me. That's just me. If I had
Mm,
been in a position for 20 years and they hired someone from the outside to supervise me,
right,
I would check myself. But
right.
people can do whatever they want.
Yeah,
Um,
and I want to just like let's pause there for a second. I want to highlight that because what I find interesting and not surprising is that dynamic. Here was this people leader that was a black woman, right? And she was being transferred out rather than removing the cancer, which was obviously not her. They move us around, or in some cases, because I experienced this myself, they'll move the individual that's a problem. They'll just pass them around rather than just removing them from the company altogether and preventing them from inflicting harm on others. And so, them saying that, and then I think even interesting how they couched it to you. They're too friendly rather than just saying he sexually harasses individuals because that's what was happening. Because
yeah,
I mean, that is classic textbook sexual harassment. And instead of saying that, oh, they're too friendly. That's just wild, but so on brand for corporate America.
agreed. It's very ridiculous. During the time that I was managing there, I'll just give you a small selection of the things that we witnessed. There was a young woman, she was a young black woman, she was a trainer on our staff, and he called her autistic as a joke during a meeting, as though that is funny or appropriate ever. Yeah, he kept his job after that. We had a member got his shoes stolen from the locker room once,
Mm,
and one of our trainers offered to help him figure out what to do, maybe
right.
locate the shoes, maybe get a ride home. And he went to Chris about it. And Chris instructed this young black man to carry the member home on his back so he wouldn't get his socks dirty, because those are the people I was working with. And yeah, he just,
I
yeah, you're
don't even
strong.
know how to react to that. That
I,
there's so many layers of wrong
it's truly
to that statement.
disgusting. Yeah. And then I think the worst thing actually was we didn't even learn about this until Discovery. During Discovery, we found that, gosh, I have to go back to the beginning. There was
Please.
a, yeah, it's insane. So there was a day where I was working late, a member had just joined, and I got a call from a membership advisor saying that she had this new member in her office. He was excited to train, and I asked
Mm.
what his requirements were, and she said he just wants to work with a white male. And I was like, does he want to work with any white male, or is he trying to describe someone on our staff poorly?
Yeah,
And she said,
yeah.
no,
Let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
right? I mean, sometimes start being kind people. And she said, no, he just wants to work with any white male. And she held the phone away and she said, just any white male, right? And he goes, yeah, just any white male. And she comes back and she's like, yes, just any white male. That's Michael, right? And I, first of all, I was disgusted. But more than that, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to be able to fulfill this request. I
Mm,
told her, I was like, it's morally reprehensible. But on top of that, it's
right.
actually illegal for me to grant or deny my staff earning opportunities on the basis of race and gender. I can't do it. It will be a liability for the company if I grant this request. So I'm not going to do that. And she insisted that it was customer service. And I was like, that's not customer service. That's racism. I'm not.
Right, like that
Yeah.
is 100% not what that is. Like in like the early 1950s called and want their
Yeah.
racism back. Come on now.
In 2019, this happened. So I immediately
Oh
call my
God.
general manager. I tell him what happens. I'm, of course,
Right,
upset. I tell him that I do have to speak to HR about it the next day, but I wanted to
right.
let you know. He says, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Like, yes, speak to HR. Also,
Hmm.
send me a written account of what happened, everything, blah, blah, blah. 2 days later, I'm on my day off and I find out that not only did my general manager instruct Chris to pair this member anyway, but he had him pair him with not one, but two white trainers. I lose my mind. I'm like, how was this
Yeah,
allowed to happen? How did you put my staff in this position? Even the
right.
trainers that were going to work with him, if I am working my butt off to be a great trainer, I don't want to think I got a client just because I happen to be a white guy.
Right.
So I speak to HR about it. To their credit, they did investigate. They found that the incident did happen. Some people were penalized, even though they maintained their jobs. And during discovery, we found that on the same day that I discovered that this member had been paired with two white men, Chris text messaged one of the VPs who he had been friends with since he got hired.
Hmm.
And he said I was having a fit. And after saying that he did not want to get involved and that he felt like I was trying to get him in trouble, he said, "She's not very charming. And I thought you would appreciate the reference. It's so much worse than you think." This VP says, "Oh, I appreciate you." Instructs him not to share any information with me, only to share information with HR if they ask. And that's the end of that. It came out during deposition that "she's not very charming"
Mm.
is a reference to an episode of Star Trek where Abraham Lincoln gets on the ship, meets Nichelle Nichols, Captain, who's a black Star Trek captain, and he says, "Oh, what a charming negress." And she looks at him like he's crazy, and he says, "My apologies, my dear. That's just a term that we used to refer to property in my time." Those two had watched that episode of Star Trek together, I imagine enough times that the word charming was enough to call to mind that I was being called a not very charming negress and perhaps property. So that's the level of it. Wasn't like subtle microaggressions. It wasn't somebody
It
said
was
something
just
about my hair. It was we were
full
literally
on.
comparing black people to animals and slaves and property, and that's what I was dealing with every day. Equinox's response when I started reporting these things was to start writing me up for lateness, which would have been valid
Wow.
if A, we were hourly employees, or if any other manager had ever been written up for lateness at any point, which it
How
turns
convenient.
out was not the case. So that is why we won that case. We showed the time and attendance records. No one else was
Right.
penalized, even though there were people who were late as much, if not more. Only I. That was the
Mm.
crux of the case. A couple of months ago, Joe Rogan decided to bring it up on his podcast and talk
Uh,
about this black woman who was late 47 times in 10 months. And she said, "That's so racist." And his response was, "Bitch, you are just always late." And I was like, yeah, there's absolutely no evidence of that. That's the problem. There's no evidence of that. And there was a whole jury trial about it. So, yeah, I have to say, it's been a whirlwind. I do think the case is cool. I think the case is cool because the reason the case was a landmark case is because it changed the way that cases like this
right.
are prosecuted. Because prior to my case, at least in New York,
Hmm.
you couldn't claim that there had been a hostile work environment created by a subordinate.
Right.
And in my particular case, because of his connection to the VP and all of my
Right.
superiors, we were able to go after them based on the
Right.
actions of a subordinate because it was all legitimized by people who were
Right.
above both of us.
Mm.
So it's really changed case law, which I think is pretty phenomenal. Since then, I've been working with NELA, which is National Employment Lawyers Association, to
Yes.
limit the amount that judges can knock down plaintiffs' awards in
Right.
workplace discrimination cases. Because typically what happens is a jury will say, "This is what is required to make this plaintiff whole and to
Right.
deter people from doing this in the future." And a judge will arbitrarily say, "I think that's too much. There's no
Mm.
case law that supports this being the amount," and they're basing it on previous judges who have knocked down
Right.
awards. And that practice, it's called remitter. It's rampant in New York. It does not
Mm.
occur to the degree that it occurs in New York in any of the surrounding states. So NELA
Interesting.
has been working on getting a bill passed that limits judges' ability to apply remitter unless they can demonstrate that the jury actually showed
Mm.
bias, actually acted inappropriately in giving their award and their verdict. And it's been really fulfilling to have my case go the way that it went and be able
Yeah.
to push forward and do things for working people in New York, even past my case. It feels really important to me. It feels important to my mission in general, but
Yeah.
it's been really powerful to speak to some of these New York State senators and assembly people and let them know that they need to take care of their workforce.
Absolutely. And to your point, so it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, did the judge reduce the award in your case, or did he actually allow it to move forward?
So ultimately, that is neither. Ultimately, Equinox was clear that they were going to ask for remittitor and or
Mm,
appeal the verdict, which would have it took us 4 years to get to trial, and it
right.
likely would have taken us the same amount of time if we had gone through all of that.
Right.
So we had to negotiate with them. And
Mm,
you shouldn't be able to bully a plaintiff in a case that you lost
right.
because of remittitor. It just shouldn't happen. So, yeah. There was another case prior to mine. I think it was Caroli v. Dental Associates or something.
Mhm.
But it was a woman who had been harassed so severely at work that she started pulling out her own eyelashes and ultimately lost vision in one of her eyes. And
Jesus.
a jury awarded her a few million, and it was knocked down to a few 100,000 because of remittitor for
That's
someone to
absurd.
lose vision in one of their eyes. And a judge shouldn't be able to do that and say, in the past, this is the max amount that we gave for this garden variety suffering. So, and
Right.
it actually disproportionately affects people of color, not even because we are the people bringing these cases, but
Hmm.
because one of the ways that they distinguish between garden variety pain and suffering and more severe pain and suffering is how much therapy did you do? How much medication were you on? How well documented is this?
Mm,
And if you're a person of color and you get fired from your job, the chances that you have your family's money to pay for therapy and your rent and everything else that you need, the chances that the health insurance that you probably
say
just
that.
lost can be covered by Cobra or anything else, it's slim to none. So you have
Right.
these people who are losing vision in an eye, and they're told it's this garden variety pain and suffering because you can't
I,
prove that it was
wow.
severe. Yeah. So that's
Yeah. I think it never ceases to amaze me how much the residual and continual effects of systemic and institutional racism continue to impact us. And it's something, to your point, as seemingly innocuous as not having generational wealth, because that is not something that the average person of color, or black person for that matter, has access to. So to be in a position where you now have been caused real harm, like tangible harm, and then told, oh, well, yeah, it's just kind of something par for the course, like as if it would have happened either way. And then having to then move on and not have that additional revenue stream that is very wildly available to the predominant number of white people.
yeah.
So they have a soft place to land is just really unfortunate and so insidious that continues to happen in this country, and I'm sure others. I mean, I've heard from others too that have similar experiences abroad, and it's just disgusting. And yet here we are in 2025 still
I
seeing
agree.
things that are just as if the old days had never left, which they haven't.
They definitely have not. I
Yeah.
I have to say, I think one of the things that frustrates me about how pervasive racism still
Hmm.
is that even if you wanted to think about things completely selfishly,
Right.
even like if you really believe that Black people are the bane of America's existence,
Mm.
even if you want to think about things just selfishly, the reality
Right.
is you need to uphold your workforce if you expect your economy and your nation to thrive. You
Right.
need to make sure that people have their basic needs met if you
Hmm.
want your country to thrive. All of the studies show that if people had their basic needs met, the rich would actually be richer because everyone would be doing better. But there's this focus on short-term gain and short-term
Yeah.
prosperity where people need to be as rich as possible right now And because of that, they perpetuate these practices that are bad for the population as a whole.
Yeah.
So you really don't care about black people and you're really just like, I need to be an even bigger billionaire than I currently am. I would
No.
think that as smart business people, they would say,
Yeah.
this is what is required to maintain my wealth and grow my wealth. And for some reason, it seems more important to these people to subjugate minorities and women
Yeah.
than to do the thing that I expect greedy people to do.
I love that you brought this up because I tell you, this is something I've struggled and grappled with for years. And I recently came across a TikTok video that completely, like, I had that moment with that GIF where you, like, your mind is blown because it just made so much sense and fully explained to me why it is that racism continues to proliferate and to excel in the way that it does. And something that she said, and I'm not going to remember her name, so I'm not even going to try to pretend to dig it in my head. But something that she said to explain racism that just was so on the nose for me that speaks to what you're talking about. Because you're like, well, if you allowed your working class and the average minority to prosper, you would prosper even more. What she said was racism, the price of racism is extremely high, but the overwhelmingly average white person is willing to pay it. They're
It's true.
willing to pay it. And that just really crystallized some things for me because if you think about the fact, well, you would be even wealthier if you would allow us to prosper. But it's more important to have, it's not about the money, it's about the subjugation and the power. It's about the superiority. It's about feeling like I am here and you are down here. And you're seeing it play out now. You have these working class white people in rural areas who have literally, like the figurative term, literally lost the farm. Literally lost the farm. But as long as they are better in their minds than the average black person, they're winning. They can be on the streets.
And I guess there's a part of me that understands that mentality, but my personal thoughts on economics, government, all of that has always been that I truly don't have any issues with people being rich, people being wealthy. My issue is with people being poor. I don't care how wealthy you are as long as everyone has their basic needs met. If we could have billionaires, people who have their wealth increase by 30, 40% over the course of a year or two, and
Yeah.
they have more capital than the bottom 90% of the population. I I as wrong as I think that level of wealth hoarding is, I wouldn't have a problem with it if I knew that all of the people at the bottom had their needs met. Because for me, it really is about making sure everyone gets a plate before anyone has seconds or thirds or billions.
Or tens. Yes,
Yeah,
I like your
that,
billions, man.
that is how I've always felt. And so I think a
Yeah.
lot of poor and working class white people's fear in speaking about diversity and
Mhm.
equity and inclusion, I think so much of their fear is that they think that there's only a limited amount of privilege and support and money to go around. And if we include these people, we lose what very little we already have. And I can't speak for all people of color everywhere, but I can speak for myself when I say that I don't want anything from working class white people or
Right.
working class anyone. I don't want anything from people who even have $1 million. I don't want anything from people who have $5 million. You know what I mean? We live in a
Right.
world that is extremely expensive and it's getting more expensive. I don't
Right.
want anything from people who reasonably could have worked to earn their money. What I want is for people who are so wealthy, there's no way they're working for their money. You don't have a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk working 36 billion times harder than the average person who
Nope.
works for their companies. I do take issue with those people being allowed to be so wealthy that people have nothing, and then to allow the population to believe that the problem is the immigrant who just came in, or the Black person living next
Yeah.
door. They really allow the population to
Yeah.
believe that that's the problem, instead of that the problem is that you decided you wanted to keep your wealth in your pocket and you were willing to see even your own people suffer as long as you could scapegoat someone else. I
Yeah.
it's I think about it every single day, and it's such a big issue. I know that no individual can take care of it, but I think one of the most important things is for us to just look out for our communities, look out for the people that are
Absolutely.
immediately around us. For me, when I was working for Equinox, it wasn't just that I was the target of a lot of things. I'm a grown ass adult. I'm okay with being the target of a lot of things, but I had a staff of young people who were building their careers, who were just learning
Mm,
how to do the job, who were passionate about fitness and helping people and all of
right.
that. There was no part of me that was going to let those people suffer and fend for themselves
Right.
when I knew that in the position that I had, I needed to speak up. I was required to speak up. It didn't matter if I became a target because I spoke up. I needed to defend and represent the
Right.
people that were on my staff. And that's the way I've always been. It has been a problem at times where people are like, I wish. And I don't fault anyone for not feeling like that is their obligation or like that is a strength that they have. But for me, I have a big mouth. I'm gonna let it do what it does. And having a big mouth,
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it is my responsibility to speak
Hmm.
up when I can. It is my responsibility to speak up when I can do so safely.
Yeah.
And the impact to me is less than the impact to the person that is currently being harassed or targeted. If that means that you help out your literal neighbor, help out your
Yeah.
literal neighbor. And if that means that you have the privilege and real pride of being able to help your entire community, whether that's your geographic community, your racial community, your religious community, if you are able to help your community, that's what you should do. Do what you can, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we can't save anyone, but we can look out for the people around us. My
Yeah.
grandmother, she's 91 years old. She has been religious for as long as I know. Many of the women in our family were in the convent and went to other countries to open schools, all kinds of things.
Wow.
And yeah, and my grandmother's been a member of the same church for decades. And they call her Mother Una. And she has never let anyone, not in our family, not in our neighborhood, not in her
Mm,
church, she has never let anyone go without if she
mm,
has the means to provide for them. And it's not about when are you going to pay me back? It's not about I
right.
need to save everyone. It's you expressed a need and I had the means to take care of that need. It wasn't any
Yeah.
sweat off my back. You don't owe me anything. You know what I mean? I just feel like that's how we make sure that no one suffers. Until we have a government or a society that feels
Yeah.
like it is their responsibility to make sure that no one suffers, it's our responsibility to take care of the people around us. And to be honest, I think it is an honor to do that. I think it means a lot to me if people trust me to do what
Yeah.
I said I was going to do. And that's how I live my life. I can't say that everybody lives their life like that or that everybody should live their life like that. But for me, as long as people trust me to do what I said I was going to do because I've
Yeah.
done what I said I was going to do, then I'm doing the right thing and I'm fine.
Yeah, your word is your bond, and I love that. Like I'm a big fan of to mean what you say and say what you mean, and that's something that should be across the board. It isn't, but yeah, it'd be nice if it
Yeah.
was. But
Yeah.
one of the things I love about what you're saying, because this is something I've really been embracing, especially this year, especially as I lean more like away, as I'm phasing myself out of corporate prayerfully. I think about the power of one, and I think that's such a powerful thing because I think that in a lot of times we find ourselves in positions where we can speak up safely, where we can actually make a difference. And we say to ourselves, I'm just one person. What is my one complaint or my one, whatever it is, fill in the blank, gonna really impact or make a difference? It can make a difference. It absolutely
Hmm.
does. And I've said this like more recently, especially, it's like one multiplies. And so you take a step and someone else is empowered to take a step and then another person and another person and another person. So it has a ripple effect. And so I really love that you are leaning into that because I think that what you do and what you stand for embodies that. You believe and like you carry yourself in the belief that there's power in one. Even if it's just one person, there's still power in that, because the one person can absolutely make a difference. And I always think about the that pebble analogy. When you like just throw it into a body of water, it ripples. It's just one pebble, right? But it has a rippling effect. And I think that is how we should look and think about ourselves. We are not just a lowly person, we're a pebble. And a pebble can ripple. And it's, as long as you're willing to put yourself out there, metaphorically speaking, I think that can make such an impact. And I would love to hear about, now with Equinox behind you, and I'm fully gagged that they are still in business. But that is just how
Listen,
corporate America works. So I
all
don't
of
know
those
why.
people maintained their jobs after that trial. Yeah,
I want to be shocked by that. I want to be. I really do, but
I
I'm
know
not.
it's possible.
I'm not. I'm really not, because that is how systemic racism works. That is how institutional racism works, and that is how it continues to survive. Not just survive, it thrives. Because
Always,
that is who corporate
never
America is for.
ceased. What am I doing since then? So yeah, I what I'm doing now is actually the stuff I'm really excited about, and so I'm honestly really excited that you asked. So I decided in 2020 that that was my opportunity to go back to school.
Nice.
Jobs closed. I didn't have anywhere I needed to be. I didn't have a job that was paying me that I could quit. It was like, if
Right.
I don't go back to school now, I'm never going to go back to school. So I did a bunch of prereqs, and now I'm doing the physical therapy doctorate. I'm really excited about
Awesome.
it. Yeah, I'm really excited. My entire family is basically medical professionals, like all of them.
Nice.
Yeah, and the way that I've watched my mother and my grandmother, all of them do their professions and serve their patients, I
Hmm.
think formed the way that I feel about healthcare as service.
Yeah.
And I think I've discovered in my 42 years that service is really what makes me feel whole. So I'm really looking forward to it. I decided that I wanted to do physical therapy, partially
Hmm.
because I knew I wanted to do something that was more care based and less
Yeah.
about vanity or whatever. But also, I, I don't really have any interest in like a med school or being an NP. I've been a movement specialist for decades at this point. I want to move forward and be better at movement. So
Yeah.
physical therapy seemed really natural. We start practice in January. I'm very excited about it. The plan is to ultimately, thank you, is to ultimately do physical therapy. I think that is the way that I can best, well, there's three main things that push me in the direction of pelvic floor. First of all, there's not enough pelvic floor practitioners. I spoke to my
Mm.
gynecologist about it, and she was like, I never have anywhere to refer my patients. So there's not enough.
Hmm.
But more than that, we see these health disparities because of a lack of health equity
Right.
that disproportionately affect Black people. We see the mortality rate among Black mothers being 3 times higher, I believe, than any other race. We see Black
Third.
men dying of prostate cancer at a higher rate than any other race. And for
Mm.
me, when I was thinking about what direction to go in, I was like, how can I improve outcomes for my community?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Pelvic floor is required for just about anyone who is capable of having a child or has a pelvic floor, which is everyone. Yeah,
Everyone.
after you go through prostate, testicular, colorectal cancer, you should
Yeah.
have pelvic floor physical therapy if you want to get back to
Mm.
function, you want to get back to your regular life, you want to have the confidence to go out and do the
Right.
things you want to do. That's going to be helpful. I also learned when I was doing my supervised hours to get into my
Hmm.
program that the medical community and the scientific community is often ahead of where we are socially. And for pelvic floor, they've already established a level of training required to also work with trans patients. And for me, it was like,
Mm.
oh, these are all the people that are not getting good care because people culturally haven't accepted that they might
Right.
need it. We have Black women, we have Black men, we have trans patients. And so I somehow managed to find a niche that ties all of these communities that I
Yeah.
care about into one thing. And I'm so excited to do it. I had a professor my first semester who said, that we needed to take our future profession seriously and our education seriously. And he said, I'll
Right.
never forget it. He said, right now, you are earning the right and privilege to put your hands on people for healing.
Mm.
And I've never let it go. I've carried it with me that since that day.
Yeah.
Everything I'm doing right now is to earn the right and the privilege to have someone
Mm.
trust me with their body. I don't know if there's a greater honor than someone trusting you with the car they have to drive in every day for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it feels really powerful. It feels like a calling. It's like very stressful because I don't want to be mediocre at it.
Which would be impossible. So
um,
we're not going to worry about that. We're not claiming that.
I'll take your vote of confidence, but I am concerned. I want to do my best.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I'm doing now, and I'm so excited about it. It gets me up in the morning. There are times when I don't sleep for a couple of
Awesome.
days because I have to do work, and I'm just like, it doesn't matter. It'll all be worth it in the end
Yeah.
when people know that I do work and they trust me and they have they have a healthcare provider who they can trust to look out for them in a way that maybe no other
Right.
healthcare provider. So that's where I'm at. That's what I'm doing, and I'm really stoked.
That is amazing. And I think to your point that I think that sometimes can be lost on just the general public is that we're already so marginalized as a people. And so access to care for us has always been a challenge. To be believed when we go in to see medical providers can often be a challenge. That is something that I've always had to struggle with, like even leading up to. And then I decided I just need to have Black medical professionals in my life and just forget trying. That's just it. Period. And I say that to say that I think that the fact that I think it's easy to take for granted access to medical care when you're always used to having it, when you can afford it, when you can be laid off, whatever the case is, and afford to pay for Cobra, which is an insane amount of money. If you've ever looked at a
Funny.
letter, here's your Cobra, and they're like, well, I don't have a job. How do you expect me to pay for that every month? So it's just so it's always so satisfying and just heartwarming to hear people realizing that we there needs to be more of us in these professions that have traditionally been barred from us, that we have traditionally not always had access to, that we're just getting our footing in. And I think especially for Black women, because I do see a difference between Black female professionals, medical professionals, and I've experienced it myself because there's usually an empathy. And even what you're saying, just like to be able to be trusted, to entrust someone's body to your care. And I think that's that level of care and empathy that is so uniquely like that I have seen in the spaces of Black women that are in the medical profession. So there's not enough and there needs to be more. So I'm excited and I can't wait to see the fabulous things you're going to be doing when you're all said and done and you're going to be amazing and we're going to look back and like remember what I said when we have this awesome conversation and you were worried and I told you it would be amazing. See, I can even play you the tape.
Listen, I will never not be thankful for your vote of confidence. I need to carry it with me so I don't
Yeah.
constantly question myself.
Yeah, and like I mean you said it earlier on. We don't need to help them. We need to own our amazingness. We need to lean into our confidence because they're certainly not giving that to us. So we need to take that back.
So,
Yeah. So, and I'm really excited to see what you're going to do next. And I'm curious. So, is there a book in the works? What is there anything more that's going to come of this particular this sordid chapter in your life?
I truly don't know. I think the only reason I even continue to speak about it is because I think we're so unaccustomed to seeing wins that it's
Yes,
important to let people know that you can advocate for yourself and you can win.
absolutely.
Maybe you won't. Maybe you won't win, but that shouldn't stop you from speaking up. The
Right.
law exists to protect all of us, not a select
Hmm.
few of us. Whether it is
Absolutely.
applied that way, different story, but it exists to protect all of us. Anything I can do to let people know that they don't have to throw their dignity in the trash to earn a paycheck, I'm willing to do. So I don't
Yeah.
know what will be next beyond education, healthcare practice, but I will continue to speak up for as long as I believe that it empowers people to speak up for themselves. And it's really that simple for me.
Love that. And as we wrap up, this is one of the things I would love to have you do, because we have listeners from all over the place. And I'm sure there are women, particularly Black women, listening right now that are facing their own version of Equinox. And so, if there's one piece of advice that you could give them, what would that be?
Oh boy. This is maybe going to sound like an abstract piece of advice, but I think the most important thing to my success in my own case was finding a legal team that actually believed me and believed in the justice system, believed that they could make things work as it was intended to work.
Right.
And I remember speaking to my father about it, and my family's Caribbean, so I didn't really expect my father to have any real supportive not because he's not supportive. He's the most supportive man in my life, but I didn't expect him to be like, this is the way to go. And I remember my father said to me, he said, he really opened up the door for a lot of Black women to speak up for themselves and to let other people know that it's not that we're not to be challenged, it's that we're not to be underestimated.
Right.
And I was able to do that because I had a legal team that believed in me and believed in my case. And I can't say enough how they supported me from day one.
Mm,
There was never any doubt in their minds that this was a winning case, whether
yeah.
the verdict went the way we wanted it to or not. There was never any doubt in their minds about the
Mm,
veracity of my claims.
yeah.
So if you're going to go that route, I think it's really, really important to find attorneys who fully support what you are saying. If your attorney does not
Absolutely.
fully support what you're saying,
Absolutely.
look for another attorney.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best piece of advice that I can give, because I would not have been able to survive those 4 years without people telling me every day, Röbynn, you know the evidence. You know what
Yeah.
we're saying is true. You just have to let us do our jobs. Our job is to do our jobs. Your job is
Absolutely.
just to keep telling your story.
Yeah.
So that's my like big piece of advice.
No, I love that, because to your point, I think sometimes when you're trying to take this fight on, if you don't have people that are backing you, that actually are believing what you're stating, it makes it harder. And it's hard to keep going and keep the fight if you don't feel like the people who are supposed to be in your corner are actually in your corner. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I think that's a fantastic piece of advice. And I mean, I look back at my own Equinox, and I think about the fact that if I had, and that's why I didn't pursue it, is that I didn't feel believed
Yeah.
by the attorneys that I spoke to. And it also then discourages you, because it's like, well, if you don't even believe me, what's the likelihood that I can even take this to trial and have anyone else believe me?
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
disheartening, but I
Even
yeah,
if it's not a viable case to take to trial, you still need an attorney that you trust to tell you the truth instead of to say this is going to be a hassle or what. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's
right,
not even about someone who believes they can win. Sometimes it's about trusting
right,
someone to be honest with you if it's not a winnable case. I'm happy that I had attorneys who believed me regardless of whether they thought the case was viable or not.
yeah,
I, to be honest, I think we need those people in our lives in all aspects, not just when we're doing legal things. You know, you
yeah,
need a boss who believes that you can succeed. You need team members who believe that you're capable of leading or working with them. You need family that believes that you will stand by them and, you know what I mean, and support them because they're
absolutely,
doing the same for you. Like, we all need people who validate what we do and validate our existence. And we don't all have that option. I feel very lucky to have had that in my life. I have people who, even when I doubt myself, validate me every day. Shout out grandma and dad. Uh,
okay, yes, absolutely,
but we all need that. And maybe that means we need
yeah,
to cultivate that in our own circles. Like,
absolutely,
we can do a little pruning and we can do a little cultivating because we need to be supported. None of us are just one person.
right, yeah,
Unfortunately, you
absolutely.
can't do everything alone. You really can't do anything alone. So,
I love that. Well, that is a fantastic note to end things in. So, thank you so much, Röbynn, for coming on the show, for sharing your story, sharing the truth of the ugly side of one of the biggest household names that I know in terms of gym and fitness. But I digress. And we are so looking forward to seeing what you do next. And I hope you will come back on and join us. So thank you. And as always, thank you to the audience for listening. And until next time, take care.
do you see?
Thanks for tuning in to Black Womaning in Corporate America, the podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, or submit a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And don't forget to grab your copy of Playing the Game While Black Womaning in Corporate America, available now wherever books are sold. Until next time, take care.